any of you actually heard anyone speaking about quarks? Well, when I first saw that that was the theme, from Quarks to Love, I have to confess I did not know what a quark was. Did any of you have that experience, or do you all? Most of you knew? Oh my goodness.
I think they found that they don't exist.
Well, that's the reason no one's spoken about them, I suppose. So, but I was with a science teacher when I read it, and I said, what is the quark? Anyway, she said, well, let's look it up. So we looked it up, and if they were to exist, which some people believe they don't, they were supposedly the smallest known particle. The smallest known part. Can you beam me up a little bit?
It's pretty high.
It's pretty high.
Talk a little louder when we give you the handhelds.
Okay. Can you hear me if I talk at this modulation? My voice tends to drop, and it's true. But at any rate, so the smallest known particle, and they even, whoever thought they discovered them, gave them flavors, 6 flavors of quarks. And one of the interesting characteristics that I read about was that they could not be separated or isolated from their energy field, at least in certain places where these are supposed to exist. And I thought, well, that's really not so different from us. We cannot be separated or isolated from our energy field either. We're not going to be separated from the energy in this space or from the energy that we might experience that's so-called inside or so-called outside. But when I first saw or read about the smallest particle, what I remembered was an experience that I wanted to share with you. It was many, many years ago, and I had been doing self-inquiry in the fashion of Ramana Maharshi's question, who or what are you? And I was on a plane coming back from the Midwest that was flying into Denver. If any of you have flown into Denver, you know it can be windy, right? It can be very turbulent at times. And this was one of those times where it was just one of those white knuckle times. Everybody, was really wild turbulence. And so the question came into my mind, who is feeling this wild ride right now? And immediately, there was just this sense of being the movement, the plane, the wind underneath the plane, the vaster space in which the wind was happening. And all of that expansive vastness was totally at peace. It was totally still, even though all of this turbulence was happening. And that in itself was really remarkable. But then a very, very strange and interesting thing happened next, is that I found myself not just this vastness, but it contracted to the teeniest speck of dust you could imagine. Maybe we could call it a quark if such thing existed. But at any rate, it was, so now I was, and of course it wasn't the Dorothy Hunt it was what was being revealed was the smallest, tiniest piece of dust. And I knew it was the exact same thing that had been this vastness, this expansive mystery, as it seemed. And that's what I wanted to share with you, because duality is not a mistake. And duality is not the opposite of non-duality. That's how the mind looks at it. Duality is the expression of what is not two. And so if we're really understanding the not-two-ness of life, the non-dual aspect of our truest nature, we realize that duality is the way that this relates to itself. It's the way it loves itself. It's the way it sees itself. And so some of you were here for John's presentation where we were looking into each other's eyes, and I had my partner was Don. And just looking into eyes, the infinite sees itself, if that's where we're coming from. The infinite is seeing itself every moment. And it seems to me that duality is really for the purpose of the infinite doing that, playing with itself, seeing itself, loving itself, returning all the parts of itself that the mind has decided shouldn't be here, returning it back into the wholeness of the heart, of the true heart. And so, what is that? What is that is the expression of the infinite nature of ourselves? It feels to me like its first movement is love. It's just love. It appears to love to be, because here it is, being everything, right? Being everything. And I have a little, very short poem I wanted to share with you. Love is the reason, without reason, before reason, its own reason, no reason. Yet here you are, unborn. You actually. You have unborn nature. Here you are, unborn, unconditionally loving what dies. Isn't that the paradox? Yes, we have an experience of birth, life, and death, and we have experience of being unborn, the infinite nature of reality. And many of you here know of those aspects. And we think of them as being separate, but they're actually not separate from my perspective. You know, every thought, every feeling, every experience that you've ever had could not have ever been known without this that's awake in you, right? This awareness, this awake space, this mystery of what is awake to every single moment of our lives, it's so present and so simple, we overlook it. And we overlook the fact that it's actually free. It's not picking and choosing what it's going to be here for. It's simply here for what's here. And to me, that's the simplest form of meditation, the simplest definition of meditation, really. Being here for what's here. And being here means being here with our whole body and mind. This is our instrument. This is God's instrument that enables the divine to see and experience and know itself. Is how it feels to me, anyway. So I wanted to ask a few questions and then maybe lead us in a little meditation time. If you don't look at your watch right now, what time is it?
No.
Very good. I knew somebody would come up with that. It's always that, isn't it? But now is not a little increment of time. It's the timeless. And yet we're always there. Here, now. Well, that was my next question. Where are you? Not what time is it, where are you? Right? Here. No matter where you go. The time is now, and where you are is here. Now, mostly the mind is someplace else, and that's why we don't have the non-separate experience of our lives. We're dividing ourselves between mind and body. We're dividing ourselves between self and other. We're dividing ourselves in all kinds of ways, some of which are needed in order to see an apparent other, but it's not actually a division. But some of it is, as we've heard so many different people speak about this weekend, that division has created a great deal of suffering. A great, great deal of suffering. And a great suffering within each of us is the division we have from our own expressions, our own moment of experience. It shouldn't be this way, it should be some other way. I shouldn't have felt that, I should feel this. He shouldn't be this way, he should be that way. And so forth and so on. And right away, we're out of the undivided nature of this that's just simply awake in each of us. It's not a separate awakeness. It's what we share. It's the experience, the experiencer of our reality. And it has all these different viewing points. Some of you might be familiar with this little book, Mr. God, This is Anna. Have you ever read that little book? It was about a precocious 8-year-old. She died very young, but she had a statement in there that I always remembered, which was, man has infinite points of view, whereas God has infinite viewing points. And I really love that. You are a viewing point of the infinite. Something that comes to my mind, I don't know why often, is just how I would love to be able to see like a bee, it has all those facets, or like a cow, eyes in the side of your, those are viewing points of the infinite in form, in a vast array of form. So I want just to invite you for a little experiential time to just take a look around this room, and to the extent that it's possible, don't put any names on anything. In other words, imagine that you're seeing this room for the first time. You don't have names. Of course, the names are going to come to you. There's nothing wrong with this. Is how we can communicate with each other. But if you're just seeing without labeling, what's the difference in the way that you see? I was in the big hall doing this just yesterday, and just like, wow, without the labeling that our mind does, there's just this wholeness. Everything's in it that's in it. Any given moment, if we see from time to time, globally, we see without separating this and that. And the thing that can't be separated is the seeing itself, Whatever you see, there's something aware of the seeing, right? Whatever you feel, there's something aware of what you're feeling. And now just become aware of the space in this room. Something's awake, isn't it, to this space? And begin to draw your own attention into the space in your body, the space in your mind, the space in your heart to feel whatever it feels, the space in your mouth, in your lungs, in your stomach. We have this space that's used for functioning, but the space itself, we share. And if the walls were to come down on this room or this building, would the space go anywhere? The space would still be here. So we can begin to feel into this vast space that is our universe, and that is also the awake space within each of us. And then we've had a lot about breathing, right, this weekend. Maurizio's up there breathing, doing my imitation of Maurizio. No. But the breath, as many of you know, is this portal, from my perspective anyway, of the infinite giving life to each one of us, every moment. It's a gift, the infinite's giving to itself, this breath that keeps the body alive as long as it does. And seeing Mona, were some of you there when Mona was talking about Ilah being the breath and the heartbeat, the rhythm of the breath. This whole universe feels like it's a dance of energy, the energies that we share, the energy of the cosmos, the energy in the body, and it's continually moving. And yet, just like that experience on the airplane, there's something at peace, regardless of the turbulence. Something that's still, even in the midst of movement. And that's a paradox the mind isn't going to understand, but you can experience it. Because you can experience yourself very still in your being, even when the mind is confused or sad. And if we're willing to bring consciousness to the experience at hand, not be separate from the experience at hand, we have an enlightened moment where we're not separating ourselves from what's here or from who's in front of us. Do you know? It's being here totally and completely, sensitively, openly. And the experience will be whatever it is. If you touch something, just touch something. Touch. You can touch your body, touch your chair, touch whatever. You know? And really, really put all of your attention, your devotion, we might say, into the felt sense of touch. The infinite's touching itself in you, in me, in this moment, in this experience, whatever it is. Sometimes I like to think of, when we do namaste to one another sometimes, that we're really having a symbol of the joining of the absolute and the relative. And we bring them together and let them touch consciously. They're always present together, but we don't always know that, do we? And that's why, and John was talking about this earlier, bringing consciousness to the union, we might say, of the moment and that which is aware of the moment, to whatever we see and that which is seeing. Because as St. Francis of Assisi once said, that which you're searching for is what's looking. What you're looking for is what's looking. So what's looking out of your eyes right now? Or what I was seeing in the gazing exercise that we did a little while ago, or that we did yesterday or Thursday, whenever it was, there was another gazing invitation in the Hayes Ballroom. That looking, when we're not filtering it only through our mind and our conditioning, the looking itself, we begin to just see and feel the infinite dimension that's here in each one of us. Just in the looking. That can't really be divided. Now, in the deepest mystery, the absolute ground, we might say, that's something no one who has had that revealed could say what it is. It's indescribable. And it's unknowable to our mind. And yet that's the continuum that I'm speaking about. Ramana Maharshi said there's only the self. Capital S, self. Buddhists would say non-self. There's only the self. When limited, it's the ego. When unlimited, it's the absolute. Only the self. When limited, it's the ego. When unlimited, it's the absolute. And I might put a third piece in that continuum, and that piece would be presence. There's the ego, there's presence, and there's the absolute ground out of which the light of awareness seems to shine, out of which presence comes, we might say. And whatever that is, this that's aware in you, this that's awake in you, it doesn't divide itself. It cannot divide itself from the moment at hand. So there's something that can't be divided even in our experience if we have eyes to see. If we're quiet enough, we begin to feel and sense that perhaps there's something that's not dividing us even in this moment, even though we have these incredibly unique and beautiful forms. So I want to invite you into the deeper dimensions of your being. And we'll do a little guided meditation, if that's all right. So John did a lovely job of inviting us from the head to the heart. Ramana called the self the heart. The true heart is the self. And it's not locatable, actually. But it has this portal of our own senses, our own expression, our own way of being. But I'm going to ask you to notice, without making any effort whatsoever, just notice. Before you try to become silent or try to become present, before you try to do anything, what's here? Is silence already here before you try? Is something present before your mind tries to become present? Is something present even to your mind? Already. We don't create this. And it's not imagination. Something's already quiet, already present. Is there something already at peace, regardless of what's going on? Something already at peace. If we stop, just stop to notice. And then I want to invite you to your home ground. There's a sense of it that each of us has. I can't tell you where or even how to get there, but you know who you deeply are knows it's home ground. And you can sense into it and feel into it when you're not thinking about it or how to get there. And this home ground, it both welcomes everything that is, and it also dissolves everything within it. So it's a place where questions can arise and questions can be answered, but it's also the place where the questioner, herself or himself, might dissolve into the even deeper dimension of our being. The most undivided place of all. It's no place at all. It's unknown to the mind, but not unknown to itself. So whether it's welcoming everything or beginning to melt certain divisions, certain ideas we may have about who we are or what should be, it's a place of great emptiness and a place of great fullness. Right here in your experience. It's nowhere else. This is where all dualities can be here. Up, down, left, right, male, female. Health, illness, joy, suffering. Everything that is comes originally from the source, is an expression of the source, a manifestation of the source. And it returns to itself because it's never been anything else. So this is where you might feel the emptiness of it. And by emptiness, I don't mean some nihilistic view. This is empty of definition. It's empty of separation. It's empty of judgment, empty of other. It's where the questions might dissolve along with the questioner. And just let yourself feel or sense whatever wants to be revealed in this moment, in your own experience. There is a single awareness, an infinite ways of seeing content of that awareness. Infinite content, I should say. So there's no thing that's not an expression of it, and no thing that can't be returned to it, to the peace, to the stillness, to the quiet, to the light of your own awareness, the light that you are, actually. And the more we consciously connect with this dimension of our being, the more we feel it shine through us and through the universe. If you were to know that you share the ground, the deepest ground, not just with your friends and those that agree with you, but with those who don't agree with you, with those who have completely opposite perspectives of viewpoints. But if you were to let yourself dive deeper and deeper and deeper to find where you are undivided, actually, what might that do to our lives, to our perspective, to our point of view? It's not a should. It's just an invitation for each of us to inquire. So anytime you're ready, you can begin to open your eyes. But we don't have to leave our home ground in order to think, in order to speak, in order to experience life as it is. So you can ask yourself at any time to really just take a seat in yourself. Take a seat in this home ground. When Adya asked us the first night, what if we really asked the question, an innocent question, how would the heart respond in any given moment or to any particular person that we might be meeting at this conference or elsewhere? So I might open it up to questions or comments that you all might have. But I just remembered I did promise my grandson I would share one thing with you. Because last year I shared something, when I was at this guy, I shared something about his older brother. And so, I have to tell you this because anyway, it was a lovely moment. The two of them, they're 7 and 9, and the two of them were talking about black holes. And the little one, the 7-year-old, turned to me and said, "Grandma, do you think awareness itself gets sucked into a black hole?" What do you think I answered? I answered no. But then on deeper reflection, perhaps this dimension that I'm speaking about is really that which sucks everything into it because it's what everything comes out of. And I'm not talking about a black hole in space. Anyway, I'd love to hear from you now that I've, done my grandma duty. Yeah, over here.
Well, this is kind of silly, but something came up in me when you said that.
Wait 1 second. We'll, even though your voice is loud enough, he's going to give you a
Oh,
mic.
excuse me.
That's okay.
I said this is kind of silly, but when you said that, I'm impelled to share what my 5-year-old grandson said to me one day when we were driving along. We weren't talking or anything, and out of the clear blue sky, he said, they call me Mimi. He said, "Mimi, I know what kids are for, what little children are for." And I said, "What?" He said, "God whispers to them what they're supposed to tell everybody."
Does anybody have a question or a comment about what you might have discovered or shared in the, exploration?
Thank you. I don't even know how to describe this, but when you were advising us to look around the room and don't label anything, somehow, all of a sudden, that's exactly what happened. I was seeing sights, I was hearing, there were sensations, but there were no thoughts, there were no descriptions. There was just, I
Just
suppose,
this.
what is,
Just
with no description whatsoever. It was completely
yes.
different from my
That-
customary way of
That
experiencing.
is what some would call an enlightened moment. Truly. But it doesn't mean there's a somebody who gets enlightened.
Yes.
There isn't. There isn't. When we awaken, we realize this wakes up to itself. It's not a separate somebody that wakes up. Do you know? We think that we're searching for the divine, but the divine is here having a human experience, and it's your experience. What else is here today? Yes.
I'm sure many here have been out of body. I've been out of body twice, and can I relate those quickly? I've been out of body twice,
Okay.
and I'm sure many have, but in 2010, after having meditated for a period of time of about an hour a day for 4 months, I was doing. I went out for a walk on a sun-bright day, walked down the street, and suddenly, like someone had flipped a lens, I was up in a tree as a ball of light. Looked down at the body, there was no me in the body. I observed, this is what's real, even though I had studied for many years, decades, I guess, David Hawkins and different others. And then suddenly, just like that, though I was out of time, there was no time, of course. However, suddenly, just as suddenly, there was like a switch flipped and I was back in the body. And I was pretty awestruck. I was walking, I continued walking, but I still felt in awe, like God shock. Mm-hmm. I think they call it, David Hawkins called it that anyway. Yeah. And the second time was this year, on August 1st. And that was when I had read something that was enlightened, of an enlightened person. And I read it over and over. I was pulled sort of into it. And I went to the bathroom at home and back in the guest the master suite wing, and walked past the mirror, and I looked in the mirror. I felt like as a cloud, but I looked in the mirror, and the body was as a piece of furniture. There was no one in it. Maybe others have had, and that lasted for 4 hours. I went out about 4 hours. I was outside on the screen porch for a while, just listening. The awareness was listening to birds
Yes.
and such. That's all.
These kinds of experiences are delivering a message, right? And that the message will be whatever it is for each one of us. But then this that we are that's formless, we might say, has in fact taken form and is that form through and through. So if we think, well, it's only this out there, it's only this transcendent thing, then we really miss how and in what degree and how sensitively it may be wanting to operate and love and see through you. So this is the dance, isn't it? The dance of the absolute and the relative constantly, but there's something that sees which side of the coin is up, right? Here's absolute, here's relative, something notices. Oh my goodness, you're having this incredible transcendent experience. It's giving a message to you. And then, oh, I'm back in my body again. but that body belongs to the infinite. That body is that emptiness through and through. And that's what I think really coming home to our relative existence is part of the circle of awakening. We will wake up to the absolute, but as my teacher Adyashanti said, this is only halfway around the circle. Now, how does it want to actually be embodied? How does it want to move? How does it want to respond in our daily life? Because apparently this that loves to be is being you guys, and it's being your particular life and your particular experience. And can we honor that and become curious about it and actually begin to feel that this, while it doesn't belong to a separate me, it belongs to the infinite, but we are that infinite expression. And those are what those kinds of experiences show us, right? That we're objects in this that's awake. That was one of your experiences. Sometimes in the old days I used to have that feeling I'm walking through myself. Have you ever felt that? Like the body's walking, but that's not the whole of it. And yet it is the whole of it. It's the whole of it expressing itself in these unique and beautiful ways. And sometimes in ways that don't seem so beautiful. As you know, we don't live in what any mind would consider a perfect world. However, the wholeness of being is what's perfect. It's perfectly whole. And when we allow time, okay, we got it too. This was more like a rabbit, or, it wasn't a devil, I don't think. But at any rate. So, there's a wholeness. And when you were looking at the room, there was this wholeness of being that was looking. It feels like, from your description. It wasn't dividing it up into, this is a table, this is a chair. We use words to communicate, and they can be used for good and ill, we might say. But when you come to see with the heart, as John was inviting us to do, you see from a perspective of wholeness, you see from a perspective of love, and whether you're a quark that may not exist, or, an example of, what science now believes are not just one universe, but maybe billions of universes beyond which the mind can't even contemplate. Same. The most awake expression that you've ever known or had the pleasure of being with, same awakeness in each of us. So I just invite you to discover it, to honor it, and to realize what a gift you've been given to express that in very human, embodied form. So thank you very much for being here and for listening, and enjoy the rest of the conference.